Okay, I think we'll get started. Give people enough time. We have quite a few people registered, but I know it's busy and it's dinner time and things like that. So I'm sure more people will join as we get started. So welcome to this first event of Real Landlording summer event series where we go in depth into different types of issues that are related to landlording. For those of you who aren't familiar yet with what we do, so I'll introduce myself and the company. I'm Sheryl Sittman. I'm the founder of Real Landlording, which is a company that I founded in order to help landlords, primarily in the Philadelphia metro area, develop the skills and get the education and knowledge and help them to navigate through these all of the things that landlords need to know about in order to be successful. As anybody who owns property knows, and especially in the Philadelphia region, there's really a lot to know from a legal standpoint, accounting, financial, and then there's the obvious of needing to understand quite a bit about what you need to know for managing a property. Structural issues, maintenance issues, how to manage tenants. There's a whole realm of things. And for me personally, the journey that I have taken over, I think it's about 15 years that I've been a landlord, has been very interesting, and I've learned so much. I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of um, really big issues that have come up, and almost anything that you can imagine. I don't think there's a month that goes by where I don't learn something new and get surprised by something. And I found that this is a very chaotic business that needs or demands to be better structured. And so I set out on a mission in developing Real Landlording to help put some structure into all of this. Um, whether it be how to find contractors that you can trust, how to manage tenants, how to handle all of the compliance issues, all of those things that can make your daily life in being a landlord very, very complex and very chaotic. So we set out, like I said, to put some structure to the madness. You can check us out at reallandlording.com and you'll be able to see how the company is evolving. A lot has changed just recently. We're building out an entire platform behind the scenes for both vendors who serve the landlording community and for the landlords themselves, obviously. So you'll be seeing a lot of new things. And in doing this webinar and focusing right now on HVAC, which is obviously timely because of the weather, what we want to do is dive deep into particular issues that landlords are facing. I found that in the work that I do, in the early years in my career as a landlord, there's so much I didn't know. I didn't think of that I needed to know, hadn't occurred to me. And that as I learn, I get better, I save money, I become more efficient, I serve my tenants better, and I am able to take better care of my properties. These are our assets, and we want to take care of them and make sure we're obviously not losing money, maximizing profits, and making sure that we're achieving the goals that we set out to when we started investing. So the first part of this, I just want to talk a bit about the economic and business issues surrounding HVAC. And then I'm going to let Ronnie, the tech that I invited to join us, and not take over actually, but I'm going to more do it like an interview with him in order to ask him the typical kinds of questions that landlords have and to cover some topics that are hot today in terms of HVAC. And my hope is that you guys are going to leave here feeling that you know much more about HVAC, how to make the decisions, what kind of maintenance you need to be thinking about. And I think it's really going to help you in terms of saving money and making better decisions. So, um, to get started, sorry, I am not Zoom proficient quite yet. So if anybody doesn't see my screen, unmute yourself and yell at me.
Error down.
Uh, what?
The error.
Okay, but okay. If I'm doing if you're not seeing things correctly, please yell at me and forgive me for my fumbling through this. So Ronnie's going to talk later, and he's the founder of Ronnie's HVAC service, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what why I decided to bring him on and what he does. Um, so first, I want to talk about the difference between a reactive landlord and a proactive landlord. Probably you're familiar with what I'm talking about, that there are, from my perspective, there are two types of landlords. The ones who wait for something to break and the ones who try to prevent things from breaking as much as they can by doing the proper maintenance. It's not black and white, but in terms of HVAC, what a lot of people end up doing is just waiting and waiting until something goes wrong. Actually, Ronnie and I were talking about recent calls that he got for taking care of, doing some maintenance for HVAC systems, where people had gone many, many years without doing any kind of maintenance to their systems. And when he opened them up, he found these, incredibly dirty compressors. Now, this is not just about trying to keep things clean. This is about trying to extend the life of the HVAC. So when you don't do these routine maintenance, not only that you're risking the longevity of the HVAC, but it's also less efficient, and all kinds of things can happen that Ronnie will be able to tell you better than me. Um, but it's kind of a shame to not do these minimum types of uh, um, routine maintenance calls and risk the more expensive repairs, or even that the mechanicals can completely go and you'll have to replace the system. So our belief is, or our mindset is, to be much more proactive and to have, set the routine types of maintenance that you need to do, put it on your calendar, have your go-to people that you can bring in to do this and that you trust. And if you're working with the right people and doing the right things, not just that you're going to extend the longevity of the HVAC, you're also going to potentially be saving your tenants money. A lot of people didn't think much about this until the last few years, when these types of costs, like for utilities, really have an impact on tenants. And obviously, we all want our tenants to be able to pay rent. So if we can save them money in other ways, then that means they're going to have, more money for rent. And that's for like all the utilities and any expense that a tenant might have to take on. So as a good landlord, it's not just being nice, it's also in your interest to be minded to tenants' expenses. So if just cleaning a compressor can save a lot on the electric bill, that's a great thing to do, both for yourself and for your tenant. So this just goes to what I was talking about, like with a dirty compressor. And that picture actually is quite similar, I think, to the condition that my own compressor in my primary property was in. And that was like the first time I met Ronnie when he came and cleaned my compressor. And and it did make it seems to have made an impact on our electric bill. So this just explains in this slide, some of the statistics. I'm not going to go into it, but like it can save 30% on energy consumption. Um, it it can have a huge impact. So um, this in this slide, I just want to go through the stages of or like the level of priority of what your responsibility is as a landlord or what the way you can frame it to make some sense. So the first priority should always be safety, obviously. Having CO2 detectors, making sure there's no gas leaks, protecting against fire, all of those things are obvious non-negotiables. On the second level, or second priority, is protecting your income. So you want to make sure you do what you need to so you don't have failures, you don't have water leaks, which cause other types of damage, that your systems are secure, right? Like you can have, in some neighborhoods, if you have a compressor in a vulnerable location, it can be damaged or stolen. These things happen in cities, obviously. Um, and you also want to make sure that your tenant is happy. So having a HVAC that doesn't cool properly, that breaks often, things like that can really impact you because tenants are going to move if if they don't have cooling for a couple of weeks, they feel like they've paid for it, and they're not going to feel like they need to stay and wait for you to take care of something if the problems keep repeating. Um, at the third level, the priority is preventative preservation. So doing what I spoke about before, doing routine maintenance, cleaning the condenser coils, all of these things that, again, I'll let Ronnie talk more about the technical aspects of it, but doing the routine things in order to keep the system healthy. And lastly, at the fourth priority is like the cosmetic types of things. And it depends what level of property you have and what's important to you and what kind of tenants you want to attract. But there's a lot of things you can do to make things, say, more aesthetic, the types of vents you use, where you position things, a lot of things that it really depends on the type of property, how much you're getting in rent, and what kind of tenants you want to attract. Um, So I'm not going to talk too much more about these things because I think it becomes pretty obvious once you start thinking about it. So the cheapest maintenance is keeping a good tenant in the unit. So again, just this having good HVAC, a big part of that is how you keep tenants happy because when they're comfortable, they're obviously going to be a lot happier than when there's some kind of maintenance issue and they have to wait for someone to come if it happens again and again, that kind of thing. Um, so the other, um, another issue that I wanted to just briefly explain is the difference between operating expenses and capital expenses. So when you are getting, or when you are have expenses related to HVAC and the same goes for almost anything, there's two ways to categorize it. So it could be an operating expense, which is an immediate deduction against your income, and those kinds of deductions are minor repairs, your monthly maintenance, changing filters, that kind of thing. It's a capital expense and it goes towards, in your bookkeeping, it would go towards improvements in the property. And that would be things like a total new HVAC system or some type of a major upgrade. Or obviously when you're doing a full renovation, that's all part of property improvements. Another thing to keep an eye on is how is the statistics, the like um, how you're handling maintenance overall, and what percentage of your budget is going to, say, routine maintenance, like preventative stuff, and what's going to more, say, emergency types of maintenance. So you want to try to be at a place where over 40% of what you're spending is preventative, because that's an indication that you're preventing stuff. And that's ultimately what you want to do. So I'm not going to dive too deeply into this, but I think it's really good to just as a reminder that if you're spending a lot of money on emergency types of things, things that you had no way to expect, you need to take a look and see why that's happening, because you really want to prevent that as much as possible. And that has to do with doing routine maintenance, it has to do with the kinds of materials, the kinds of mechanicals that you install, things like that. So I'm gonna ask Ronnie to join now. I mean, he's already here, but to join me in the conversation. And the reason that I chose Ronnie is because what I found, I mean, he kind of represents what I look for in a contractor, which is someone who's going to explain things to me and give me options and explain, if you do this, you benefit like this, or you take these risks. If you choose to defer doing something, what all these things mean to me as a landlord, and how to helps me to know how to manage my expenses, to predict things, and to learn, like in terms of HVAC, it helped me to understand a lot of things that had never been explained to me prior. So let me figure out how to now change this and get out of. Okay. So, um, so first of all, welcome, Ronnie. And
Oh,
first,
hi
can
everybody.
can you, so it's Ronnie is again, it's Ronnie's HVAC service. So first, can you just tell everybody like how you got into HVAC and how you ended up starting your own company?
Well, basically, I've been working for big box companies for several years. I got my experience, and basically, I just figured out that I can do it for myself. I can do it in a way that I believe it should be done, and yeah, I can just do it better, I guess.
So, um, so the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, um, how do I know? And I've been through this a lot with many contractors where I haven't hired the right contractor. So within HVAC, how do I know if I'm hiring somebody who knows what he's doing, who's a pro basically, as opposed to somebody who's, I don't know, pulling one over on me?
Okay, so first of all, you have to obviously gauge the person that is standing in front of you, which is the hard part. Um, So that is on you and your people reading skill, but on a more general basis, so a good rule of thumb is to look at where the contractor is actually sourcing his equipment, because not a lot of people know, but I know that certainly in the state of Pennsylvania, uh, your warranty is tied to where did you source the equipment. So I source my equipment from Johnson Supply, which is one of the biggest suppliers in the Pennsylvania area or in the Northeast in general. And whenever I install a system, you get at least a 5-year warranty. So that means that I personally, me, run his HVAC service, am on the hook for 5 years if anything goes wrong. So I don't really have an option to be a fly-by-night operation because, again, I'm responsible for it. And that's a really generally good rule of thumb is if the contractor is giving you the option of a warranty that is 5 years, or by the way, in homeowner occupied residencies, some systems even offer you a 10-year warranty. So again, unless I know that I can do the job really well and I won't have to come back and fix your system and waste my time on it, I really don't have the interest of doing it. So I think is basically the biggest determining factor here.
So that, yeah, I mean, it's a really good point because um, I had a situation where I had what I thought was a new system installed by a contractor who, looking back, was not a very honest contractor, and the the system was vandalized. And when I tried to claim it on the insurance, they told me it was an old system. So that was like the perfect example where I had no idea where the contractor sourced his equipment. So. Another just like important question that it came up like when I was speaking in the beginning is what are the routine things that people need to do in order to extend the longevity of their HVAC?
Okay, so if you get an yearly inspection of your HVAC system, here are the things that I personally look for, and that actually most companies that do HVAC maintenance look for. So we do a check of the electrical to see what components are degrading. So the component that is most prone to malfunctioning is the capacitor. Obviously, I think that every landlord has had a call on a capacitor before. So if we catch it ahead of time, that actually prevents the system itself, the compressor, the fan motor, the more expensive parts of degrading over time. Because even if you run a capacitor that is on 80%, it can still perform. The system will still run. But it will, so for matter of example, the compressor will have a harder time starting. Each time it draws more current, it degrades its windings. So you can replace a $220, can do a $220 replacement, I don't know, when it's necessary, or you can wait and damage your compressor and then end up with a $3,500 replacement or a $4,000 replacement. So we look at what electric components are degrading. Maybe your fan motor is going. So again, the system basically, every HVAC system, it physically takes heat from your house and dumps it outside on the cooling side of things, for matter of example. So if it can't reject this heat from the inside of the house to the outside efficiently, then it struggles, it runs longer, it has to work harder. Over time, it degrades. So again, maybe if we catch your fan going early and it's, let's say, between $350 and $650 to replace it, we can save you the replacement of the compressor itself later down the line. So another important thing is the cleanliness of the condenser. Again, if your coils are dirty, as the coils that you have shown in the slideshow, if they are dirty, the system cannot reject heat efficiently. Again, it works longer, it works harder, and because it's a mechanical system, it has a really finite amount of cycles this compressor can run. So if you have a system that would have lived, I don't know, 20 years, and you don't clean the condenser at all, you shorten its lifespan to, let's say, 15 years. So basically, when you do preventative maintenance, you just make sure that the machine that you have at your property won't, burn down prematurely.
So when a tech comes to a property and does what is considered routine maintenance, how do I know that he's doing something that I really need, or is there any way to understand? Like, the reason I'm asking this question is because there's all those offers, like $59 for routine maintenance, and it's very suspicious because a guy comes in nicely wrapped truck with tons of equipment, and it's hard to believe how he's not making money from that $59. So
Oh
what's
no.
going on there?
So basically, actually, a lot of my business, like let's say 15% of my business is people who got the 59 inspection and then they call me to like see what was that about. Because look, at $59, the guy that comes to your house, he has a vested interest to sell you something. That's why I personally really hated working at a big box company, is because you become a salesperson. You know, you want to just upsell and tell a person that has a 15-year-old system, hey, you need a whole new system, where he might not need a whole new system. You have to do this expensive thing where you might not have to do this expensive thing. But if I am documenting the checks that I do, and I can, in a concise fashion, explain to you, let's say I've measured your capacitor, it should be rated to this number, but it sits at this number. You need to replace it. If I can show you a picture, hey, your condenser is really packed with dirt, you need to clean it up. If I can give you a concise, concrete example of why any work needs to be done, then yeah, that's basically a good sign. But if I tell you you need to replace your system because it's old, well, nobody can really predict how long your system will live. I think that at one of your properties just last week, my tech worked on a system that was almost 30 years old, runs perfectly. Is it the most efficient system? No, it's not. But I wouldn't tell him to replace it straight away because, well, it might run another 5 years. It might die tomorrow. I have no way of knowing it, but right now it's fine.
I hope you didn't just jinx me. But but yeah, I mean, in my own primary, we had someone come out 10 years ago and tell us we should get a new system, and knock on wood, it's still the system that I'm using. But that doesn't mean, well, I mean, everybody needs to make those kinds of calls, like of that those are decisions that and it's good to have someone that you can discuss it with, of okay, what does it mean if I hold on to this? Is it going to be a lot of maintenance? Is it likely that it's going to die in the middle of winter or the middle of summer? Um, so yeah, I appreciate that viewpoint. The other thing that comes up a lot is R22. And
Mhm.
I don't really know what's R22. It's some kind of gas, but what I understand is that we all need to brace ourselves for some changes.
So actually, you needed to brace yourself for changes in the R22 field right about 15 years ago. So R22 is the really old systems that are just out. They like you can't even find parts for them outside of a museum. So if you have a bad R22 system, and when I say a bad R22 system, I mean a major component failure. At this point, unfortunately, you don't have any choice but to replace the system. But what's being phased out right now is the successor to R22, which is R410A. So that has been the vast majority of systems installed in, let's say, the last 15 years, something like that, have been R410A systems. And that is being phased out right now in favor of A2L refrigerants. So again, it is a really important point if you do get a new install today to make sure that you get an A2L system, because I have seen a bunch of people that have had R410A systems installed in the last year or so, and it's a dead-end refrigerant. If their evaporator breaks in 5 years, they need to replace the whole system. If they have a leak in 10 years, it's going to be really expensive to fix that because this refrigerant is not being produced anymore. And it's not legal to manufacture R410A equipment at this point. So yeah, pay attention to what is the refrigerant type that you are getting installed if you get something installed right now.
So, like the example you gave of I have a system that's 30 years old. If I have a leak,
Mhm.
I need a new system? Or
Well, it depends on how bad the leak is. So here's the thing. If you have a leak that I can fix pretty easily, then I can actually charge the system with direct replacement. And it will serve you for some time more. But if the leak is at a point like the evaporator, where I can just braze it back together, or inside one of the condenser coils where I can't reach and I can't fix it, that's it. This system is a goner, because I can't even imagine where you can find an R22 evaporator outside of a museum. Like,
I mean, there's probably a lot of systems that are coming of age now and
yes,
are near end of life. So there's like, seems like there's kind of an explosion in HVAC
yes.
waiting to happen.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's good for you, not so good for us as landlords.
Yes, yes.
Um, the next topic I want to talk about is, I think, a really hot and interesting topic is mini splits, or some people call them ductless. I guess there's different names. Oh, look. So yeah, so what is a mini split?
Okay, so a mini split is, as you can see, I installed mini splits in my personal house. A mini split is a really exciting, amazing system. Basically, you have those things just put on a wall. And the really cool thing about it is, okay, let's say that you have a three-bedroom apartment with a kitchen and a living room, right? So with regular central air, you basically heat or cool the whole place, right? But right now, my wife is in the living room. I'm in this room. Nobody's occupying any of the other rooms. So we just don't have cooling on them. It's really way better in terms of zoning because there isn't any loss on the ductwork. So every zone that has a that has a mini split head is is cooled or heated to a reasonable degree for that zone. Um, Another really cool thing is that they are more expensive to install up front, but then servicing them in retrospect can be a lot cheaper because, again, if the evaporator breaks on your central air system, you can be looking at a few $1,000s in repairs. If the evaporator breaks on your one of the heads breaks on your mini split, you have a smaller repair going. And in terms of just efficiency and I think personally comfort, I find mini splits give me way more comfort because here's an interesting thing. So refrigeration, no matter what you think, is not done by magic. So if you have 100 degrees outside, you won't be able to cool your house to 70 degrees. It's not going to happen. So at the central air, you are looking at maybe 80 degrees inside on 100 degrees outside. With a mini split, you can look at 75 or 73 even. So the efficiency of the mini split is much higher. And again, especially in, let's say, old Philly row houses, you might have a system that has been set up for heating. And if you really want to get a good efficient system put in, you would need to rip out walls. You would need to redo the duct work. You would need to have quite an extensive work done. With mini splits, you can minimize that. With mini splits, you can basically put a few heads and a few condensers, and you have a perfectly running system that is just amazing.
So talk to me about that because I think most people here, they have properties in Philadelphia. Most properties in Philadelphia are probably close to 100 years old. So let's take like a typical row home that um, has radiators.
Mhm.
What
Okay.
and they don't want to start ripping out all the walls and want to do it the easiest way possible.
Okay, so again, let's quickly talk through it. So if you have radiators, basically, if you want to put central, there is no way around ripping up walls. It just won't be physically possible to put the supply runs in and the ductwork in. So if you put minis, basically what we do is we just put a head like this on a wall, and we run the line sets to a condenser. The damage to the drywall or to the plaster, as a lot of older Philly row houses have plaster walls, the damage is really minimal. And the work can be a little, I'll be honest, the work can be a little bit more expensive up front because of the higher cost of mini splits on the multi-zone systems. But it sort of evens out considering the fact that you don't have to do as much patching up of the drywall later, and you do get a better system that your tenants will be, I think, happier with. um and yeah, it's like for you it's less of a hassle to have to clean up later on.
And what about the ongoing maintenance? Is it the same like a central system?
So usually, it's not exactly the same because most mini splits are inverters, so you don't, for matter of example, get the degradation of the capacitor in quite the same way. They don't have quite the same components. The maintenance on mini splits is actually a lot easier, as long as you keep the condenser clean and as long as your tenant washes the filters of the indoor unit. Those systems don't require a whole lot of maintenance. They don't have a whole lot of breakage. So, just to give you sort of an idea of how much faith the manufacturers put into those units, I mostly install Daikin mini splits, and Daikin offers you a 10-year parts and 10-year compressor warranty in an owner-occupied home. So they're pretty certain that no component of the system will degrade over 10 years. So
Okay, so wait, you mentioned Daikin. There seems to be a lot of brands on the market, and I've seen people talk about ordering from Amazon and maybe installing themselves. We get on the Real Landlording platform, we get a lot of requests for different kinds of mini splits, like asking, like with different brands, asking if we have someone who can service them. And what I have found is that most HVAC techs say they don't service more than certain brands, or they don't, or even that they just don't service them. You got something from Amazon or whatever, and I've never understood why you can get paid to go to the property and take care of it. So why don't HVAC companies want to take care of just any brand?
okay, so let's say you get some off-brand mini split from Amazon that, like, I don't know, I wouldn't even know where to start looking for the components. So I just today I replaced an inverter board on a pretty old LG unit, but because LG is a big brand, a little bit problematic to install in Pennsylvania because the closest LG supplier is all the way in Allentown. But because LG is a big brand, I was able to conveniently order the part off of their official website. It arrived to me, I installed it at the client. A lot of those like small Amazon mystery brands, the sourcing of components is problematic. So I have to spend hours out of my day sourcing shady components on a system that I, quite frankly, I'm not confident it won't break again in the future because a lot of the off-brand systems, once they start going, they really start going. And here's another interesting thing. So I am doing an install next week, and the lady reached out to me and asked me how much I would charge her if she provides the mini split. So she wanted to buy from Home Depot a Mr. Cool 24K mini split for right about $3,000. So that's not a good off-brand mini split. I was able to, for the same price, offer her a Daikin mini split, which Daikin is one of the best brands in the mini split business. So again, if you go through a contractor that has a relationship with a big supplier, then he will give you a better price on a name brand.
Okay. It sounds like mini splits is something to really consider seriously, especially in older houses. But there's always going to be people who have systems that are already in place, and either, for example, I have some forced hot air homes that I would definitely want to consider adding cooling to. So what are the things that we need to take into consideration? Can we just slap on some cooling component and we have the vent work, so we're good, or is there something else we need to be concerned about?
Well, we can definitely do that, but we wouldn't be good. So here's an important distinction between cooling and heating. So when you heat a place, the air is really light. So if the air is really light, it's really easy to move that air around. So for that, you don't really need to consider efficiency. I mean, if you look at the older systems that were installed in the 70s, 80s, 90s that are just heating, they didn't put a whole lot of thought into planning the ductwork because hot air is so forgiving. You can have really mediocre ductwork and it will still work amazingly. Once you get to cooling, that becomes really hard to move that air around. And basically, a lot of times you are forced to do modifications to the system. Now, the extent of the modifications you do is obviously dependent on how comfortable would you like your tenants to be. So, one important distinction between heating and cooling is that usually heating they have a smaller return and they can get away with just one return on the first floor. And in heating, it will still keep the whole house comfortable. But in cooling, you ideally would want to add at least a second return to the second floor and to expand the return on the first floor if you do nothing else, because you need to suck the hot air out of the second floor. Otherwise, it will feel clammy. It still won't cool properly. Now, with that being said, it's a more extensive project. So what can we do to if you want to keep the scope of work down? Well, we can only expand the return on the first floor, and we can maybe think about adding booster fans to the runs that go to the second floor. Not the best solution, but if you want to save money and you want the most immediate return on investment, you just want the system up and running and you want the tenant to move in. That's also something that we can do. So there is there are options there are grades of things that we can do to actually make your tenant comfortable. But if you want them to be the most comfortable, it's a bit more of an extensive work. Then even the sizing of the supply runs, that matters as well, because in heating a lot of times you put a larger diameter of pipe, and then if you try to move cold air to the larger diameter of pipe, it doesn't move as efficiently. You don't get enough cold air coming to the room. So those are all things to consider, but there is really a lot of things that you could do, depending on how comfortable do you want your tenant to be, from pretty comfortable to perfect.
Okay, that's a great explanation, Ronnie. So I think gives people a lot to think about. I assume people are on here because they're thinking about adding cooling or that they're interested in mini splits or whatever, just want to know going forward how to handle climate control. So I want to invite everybody to whoever would like to ask questions to unmute. And I think we're a small enough group that people can just ask questions. I know there was already one from Sabra.
Hi, yeah, it's Sabra. And I actually
Sabra.
believe that Ronnie and you answered it because I'm a small owner, but um it's not a HVAC. It's HV and then AC. But I think that he answered that. Thank you.
No problem
Okay.
at all. Glad I answered it.
I have a
Anybody
question.
else have a question? Yeah.
I have a question. My HVAC guy told me I'm working on the triplex and the quad, and he told me don't put mini splits in any of the units because it doesn't have emergency heat. So in the event that where the temperatures are really, really cold and the something happens and the heat is gone, with HVAC systems, they can put emergency heat in there, so the unit will always have heat. Mini splits doesn't have that, so he told me to never do mini splits. What is your thought to
Uh,
that?
So basically, it was true, let's say 10 years ago. So the way it works is in central air, you can put, if you put a central air heat pump, you put something called an auxiliary heat strip in it, which is basically, like an electrical heat component that helps the unit once it struggles. So once temperature outside drop below 40. And in any case, a central heat pump that has auxiliary heat will struggle below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, modern mini splits that run on the newer refrigerants run at 100% capacity at 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So they are way, way, way better than putting a central system with auxiliary heat on. It's just scientifically, that's the way it is.
Okay.
And where once you get to that's on the very basic models, they work at 100% up to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Once you get to the multi-zone units, which will be what you will be putting if you put, a few like heads in your property,
Hmm.
they run, I believe, up to minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I believe it's either minus 13 or minus 15. So for
Okay.
Philadelphia, I find it really hard to believe that they will have any problem heating your house.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem.
And another thing that I mean, I don't have mini splits in any of my properties at this
You should get
point.
them.
Yeah, but when something breaks, but it seems like it might also be good for um in terms of like one of the problems that most landlords have is knowing whether tenants are changing out filters, which I don't know that we really touched on that enough, but because my understanding is that uh leaving dirty filters in for a long time really has a bad impact on
Oh,
the
yeah, it does.
central.
But
Um,
it's, by the way, let me just tell you that with mini splits, you still need to, you don't actually change the filter, you remove it and wash it.
right.
So the tenants still have to do that. And if they don't, it's less damaging to the mini split, but over time, if they never do it, it's going to be a problem.
Okay, but at least they don't have to buy something and they don't have
Oh,
to know
no,
this,
no, no.
like even knowing the size, right? Like I have so many different filter sizes. I lose track. So I imagine that for the tenants, even I mean they have one system and only need to know one measurement, but that's still it's a big ask for some tenants. So and they could in theory if they have a mini split, they can send you a picture to show you that they've actually cleaned it. And it's really just washing the
Yes,
filter in underwater, right?
just removing the filter, washing it under water, letting it dry for 10
Hmm.
minutes, and you're good.
Okay. What about the brands that are best for this for central air? What are considered the top brands, or at least like the workhorses for rental units?
So my favorite go-to brand is Goodman because Goodman again is they are owned by Daikin. So again, I think that for owner-occupied homes they offer 10 years compressor and maybe 8 years parts. I'm not sure, but judging by the how extensive their warranty is, you can sort of ascertain the quality and their reliability. But Carrier is pretty good, although I don't honestly do much installations of Carrier. And all of the big brands that like Raheem or those are pretty good units. But my go-to is Goodman personally, and because I have a relationship with a Goodman supplier, so I can get you the best deal on a Goodman.
Okay. Does anybody else have question?
I have a question. You guys kind of touched on it in different ways, but it's for my primary residence. We bought
Mhm.
a old fixer upper. We have oil heat. Like it's
Oh
so
wow.
expensive to run. It's awful. We do have central air, but we were thinking about mini splits because it's a rather big house, 2,600 square feet. So it's would be nice to just do the rooms that we're in instead of the whole house.
Mhm.
But you kind of touched on the fact that like if you have an existing heating unit, like Cheryl brought up having radiator heat, is it possible to do, we don't want to spend the money on mini splits right now when our systems are working. We're kind of going to wait till it dies. But we would love to if we could like install mini splits to kind of ask what Gene was asking, that, we'd run the mini splits and then have the oil as the backup heat if it's too cold. Is that possible to do?
Of course, you can keep both, but again, realistically, for 99% of the winter in Philadelphia, you will be fine with just the mini splits.
Okay. So it could be possible
Because
to get it in before our heat totally
yes,
wrapped out, but not worth it if it's still currently working, I guess.
again, I imagine that the oil heat is like, well, I will tell you this, so the savings won't pay for the units like in a few years or anything like that.
Right.
But generally speaking, once the system dies, and if it's a house that you plan to live in the next 10, 15 years, my advice would be go with mini splits. Again, I did for my own house, and
Okay.
I wouldn't have it any other way because in my opinion, it's a nicer system, it's a better system. Eventually those savings start to compound because again, like most of the rooms in my house currently have no cooling because nobody is in them. So
Mhm. Thank you.
no problem.
So I think that I know that people it's taking time to adapt. Like mini splits it's a technology, I don't know, it's existed for how many years? Definitely more than
For
20.
quite a bit. For
Yeah.
quite a bit. So
And outside of
outside
the
the
United
United
States.
States, yeah, it's basically the default in the rest of the world.
Yeah. So it takes time for people to get used to it. Like, I mean, a tenant who walks into a property that has a mini split might hesitate or just not understand what's going on. But actually, like my son was living in an apartment until now that had all mini splits. And it was an old building that had just been redone. So every single room, I think, has a head. So and that's in Connecticut where it gets really cold. So I think it is starting to take, I mean, it's definitely taking off, but and I don't know why. I mean, I guess we just ended up talking a lot about mini splits because it is the latest and greatest. But um, but obviously most of us aren't ready to just change over. So there's a lot of decisions, a lot of decision points that you'll have along the way as a landlord. And does anybody else have any other questions?
I have another one.
Ronnie's given
I
us
know
good
it's
answers.
kind of based off of, I'm a physical therapist. We always joke everything is, it depends, right? Like there's never a
Yeah.
great answer.
Hey, that's
We
the way it is in life.
hated it in schools. Every answer was it depends. Um, Generally, when you're looking to, let's say, add HVAC to or add central air to a property that's already ducted, all the systems are there, you're
Mhm.
just adding the condenser. What pricing should we be looking at for that? Because I've gotten wildly different quotes from different companies, and nobody can explain why the quotes are so drastically different. If you could even give kind of a range.
So it depends.
Okay.
Um, But here's the thing. So I can give you a couple of examples from my last 2 weeks. So I did a couple of jobs. One, I removed an old oil furnace and I just put in a condenser compressor evaporator combo, condenser evaporator furnace combo, and the scope of the work was $7,500 for whatever. I don't even remember what the sizing of the house was, right? But at this particular house, we also ended up expanding the return on the first floor because it was set up for heating, so the system would have been showed because sort of why is it so important to have a properly sized return? So if you think about it, if you want to blow out air, you can't blow out more air than you can inhale, right? So the same with the system. It can't move more air than it can cool. So we ended up expanding the return and putting a new system in. Light modifications to the ductwork, really the lightest. That was $7,500, which is quite honestly a good price if I say so myself. Uh, a little bit of a bigger job that we did. I think we ended it last week on Monday. Was $12,000 for adding a second floor return and basically changing the ductwork in the basement entirely and reconnecting a very old system that was made for heat. So again, just to give you sort of an explanation of the scope of work, we had to open up a bunch of walls. We had to we had to place a return on the second floor and run it through the walls to the basement. And a big box company gave the same family an offer of $10,000 just to put a new unit in without of any modifications at all.
That's what you're blowing my mind right now because I just paid $10,000 to just put a new unit in without any modifications at all. So that's why when you're bright, like that's why I was saying just a standard, like put it in, everything else stays the same. I'm getting such wild different pricing for just add a central air, like it's fully ducted, everything is fine, no modification. So that you just blew my mind right now that all of that work went into for less price than I paid to just put a unit in. Now, to be
So
fair, it was an emergency. It needed to be in. They did it next day. It was quick. I paid for the convenience, I think, of it. But at the same time, that's good to know for future properties of how to.
yeah, so with a lot of those bigger brands, that's what you pay is for the convenience and for, quite frankly, the peace of mind. Because again, the assumption is that if you go with, let's say, Gen 3 or I don't know, Lorry or one of the really big brands, you are going to get a fast service. They're probably going to do a good job.
Mhm.
Like, honestly, in terms of the workmanship, like, they do a good job, right? But and if you call me, then hey, I might be backed up for a week or two. Depends. I might be able to do it in like a few days.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, if you can get to a medium-sized contractor that is actually good, he will be able to give you a better price because I don't have the same overhead as those guys have. I
Right.
have one permanent worker and one temp worker. I don't have an advertising budget or like an office. My wife is my office manager, so you know,
Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
no problem.
Ronnie, what is
Any
your
other
company
questions?
name? Sorry, Cheryl.
Excuse me?
What's your company name?
Ronnie's HVAC service.
Okay, thank you.
No
So,
problem at all.
so any other questions? Time for one more question, or I'm going to talk.
Go
So,
ahead.
thank you everybody for joining. We have another event coming up on July 9th. I put the link in the comments. It's on landlord compliance. All the rules, changes, best practices. There's some new laws, unfortunately, coming up that we all have to be compliant for. And Tracy Thompson Thompson from Landlord Locker Room is going to be my guest. So please join us for that. Um, I hope you got a good taste of what these events are going to be like. Like this is the first one, so I'm working out the kinks of it's the technical part of stuff that's hard for me. Um, and we're going to keep doing these kinds of events. And Ronnie is a great example of the type of contractors that we work with. If you need anything, obviously, if you need HVAC, if you need any kind of contracting, maintenance, full gut rehabs, all of those things, plus any kinds of other types of services or information or education. We have resources for everything, and it's just an easy form that you fill out on reallandlording.com, and we'll connect you with someone. These are vetted contractors who are genuine. I can't think of any real big companies that we're working with because like you understand, from Kira's questions, for example, that the big box companies are not so conducive for landlords, especially. So we look very specifically for companies that are good at working with landlords and dealing with the types of problems landlords have, can manage coordinating with tenants and talking to tenants and all of that. So I really appreciate you guys taking your time for this. It is being recorded, so you should get it if you want it for to look back on. And feel free to reach out to me, of course, to Ronnie. And thanks, and have a good evening.
Cheryl,
Cheryl,
are you going
this
to
was
send out those
awesome.
slides? Because we could barely see it from your screen.
Oh no. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me know that, and I'll try.
Okay.
I'm challenged, but I'll try.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care,
Well,
everybody.
Bye.
thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Bye.